Hi, I'm Stuart Clark, the Managing Director of Russell & Russell.
And I'm Yvonne Webb of Action Coach Business Coaching. And together we are your co-hosts and sponsors of Glasgow Business Stories. We hope you're loving Glasgow Business Stories. So if you are, please do us a favour and subscribe. New episodes drop every 2 weeks, and we want you to hear all the wonderful stories from the businesses here in Glasgow. So please subscribe now. So Brian, welcome to Glasgow Business Stories. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
So my name's Brian Toward. I am Chief Exec of Wholesale Domestic Bathrooms. We are a third generation family business formed by my grandfather in 1963. And Wholesale Domestic Bathrooms, hopefully the clue's in the name. So we specialise in the retail of bathroom equipment to regular consumers, but also to businesses as well, which is a part of our setup. We've traded in lots of products over the years. Started painting wallpaper in Argyll Street in the centre of Glasgow. Dealt in furniture, fireplaces, lighting, mirrors, lots of home type products. But we are now focused on the bathroom world. So we've been that way since probably about 20, 25 years, something like that. So yeah, I love it. Family business has all the joys that go with being a family business as well. But I personally wouldn't change it. I really enjoy what we do.
And so growing up at being a family business, did you always intend to go into the business?
No, I didn't. And it's actually a story that nobody tends to believe me on when I do tell them that. It absolutely wasn't the plan. So it was originally started by my grandfather, as I said, and then run by my dad and his brothers. And I think there was a kind of collective thought that it wasn't to be a third generation family business. And that's fine. That was the case. So I had my own career, was away working, qualified accountant with one of the big four accountancy firms, through in Edinburgh. Quite happy trying to move through the various levels of seniority there. And randomly over a meal one night with my dad, we started talking about what's now colourfully known as that internet thing, was what the conversation topic was. And can I go and maybe help do that internet thing with the business? And I think that was a Friday or Saturday night on holiday. And I handed my notice in on the Monday from my career, which I'd built and worked at myself, and thought, well, let's give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? And that was 14 years ago. So it absolutely wasn't by design or put together, but it's worked out very well. And interestingly on that, I think if I was asked on advice on that now, I would suggest that would be the way to do it. I've been at a few talks with, in fact, the gentleman just passed away recently from Gap Hire Solutions. And he said that's their family business, but that's part of their ethos, is that any family member who joins the business has to earn their stripes elsewhere and get some kind of background behind them. And it certainly worked for us, and it obviously works for them as well. So I think that would be the plan, but it wasn't the plan.
And what changed in that weekend then that made you change your mind and decide you were going to do it?
I think there's an element of romance with it as well. When you're grown up surrounded by business as part of your life, then you know about the company. I worked in our warehouse at weekends as a really young boy. It's funny, I then ended up working with, or ultimately being the manager of people who I used to go in the forklift on their knees and stuff like that. So it kind of goes full circle. So I think there's that kind of romantic aspect of knowing about the business through growing up and through just being around it and what have you. And then I saw it as an opportunity as well. The business at that stage it's a fantastic company. It's been a fantastic company for many, many years. A fantastic, thriving business, but there was elements of modernisation that it needed, and I was able to take learnings that I had from the career that I had and try and put them into a successful business that was still already in place. So I think the opportunity got me, as well as thinking, well, I think the underlying for me is what's the worst that could happen? we give it a go. We see if we can do something in the internet space and e-commerce space, and if we don't, there's still a great business there, and I've got a qualification that I can go and do something else. So I think it was a kind of shot to nothing as well at the time.
And was it just that one project that you're kind of brought in, that internet thing, or was it a kind of longer term plan? Or
I think that was the initial thought, and that's what I did at the start. But I'm not that type of person. I'm a bit of a control freak. So I think at the same time, the business was maybe naturally coming to a kind of pass as well. So it was maybe, if I wasn't to do that, then it might have been an exit plan for the business. So I think at the same time it kind of suited, and my kind of natural curiosity and desire to get a hold of everything meant that I very quickly was probably sticking my nose into every area of the business, and seeing where I could do or work on anything. So as much as we did launch our first e-commerce site in that first few months, I think I was already beginning to pull plasters and look underneath and see what I could achieve or change or do.
And how did that impact your relationship with your dad and your uncles? Were they kind of open to that, or was it a bit kind of apprehensive?
Yeah, I think it was me. Absolutely, yeah. So I've one of the stories that I always remember is when I joined, one of my dad's good friends said to him, "Well, Brian's joining your business, so I take it that thinking of old school apprenticeship, like YTS type idea, I take it for the first 6 months he's going to have a brush in his hand and sweeping the warehouse type idea." And my dad said to him, "Brian's a qualified accountant. He's coming in to help try and do something, do a project and what have you." So that I did have a bit of imposter syndrome trying to join, and you try and make your mark and what have you. But for me, it was really how to get in there and get part of it, but also remembering there'll be people looking at you thinking, well, that's the boss's son, or that's one of the owner's son. And how do you manage that? I was very, very aware of that and trying to make sure that all went smoothly, which sometimes it didn't, but thankfully most of the times it did.
And were there any other family members involved? When you're saying it was your dad and his uncles, was there cousins or anyone else involved in the business?
No.
So,
it was just focused on trying to do that kind of project and see what I could do with that. So my dad and his two brothers ran the business. His older brother retired through ill health, and my dad and his other brother, we worked together for many years, and we, probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, is my uncle exited the business. So my dad and I work together now. He works limited times, but we still work closely and do well. And
I was going to say, how long after that kind of initial project was it kind of like, actually, no, this is what I want to do? And like, how did you approach that with your dad? Actually, how soon did you want to take over the business?
I think it was just a natural thing. Yeah. I think it's just my desire and real want to get involved came very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think with my dad and my uncle, it was, well, they were quite comfortable to kind of let me do it. And I speak to other family businesses where that's not the case, where there's a generational pass, but the older generation are very, very hands-on, very wrapped around saying, no, well, you can't make any decision, you can't take any authority. But we were slightly different. I think I was kind of given a lot of rope which very fortunate, and I'm very lucky to have had, to go and make my mark and have a go and see what I could do. And when that started showing some success and there was a kind of positive track there, then I think that rope got longer and longer that I was afforded. And I would say pretty quickly, I wanted to, and everybody within the business wanted me to get involved in all different areas. So that wasn't, again, that wasn't a plan, but it just kind of naturally happened through personalities and how everything had linked together.
So going from an employee, a paid position in the accountancy firm, into being in a environment where your dad's and your uncles are the boss, Tell me how you managed to establish yourself as a business leader. What are the kind of things you did to help yourself go over that imposter syndrome and become a leader?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things I did that didn't help myself as well.
Which on reflection,
but I think from my perspective, it was I did everything. So as much as from trying to build an e-commerce site, I was in the back of lorries unloading them. I was fitting new offices, carrying stuff in. I think that was my way of doing it. And again, on reflection, that sounds like it was a conscious thing to do, but it wasn't. Again, it's just my personality. People have to stop me doing that now. They have to say, well, look, no, you're not needed to do this. You need to run this business. You need to strategically think about this business. I'm like, no, let's get that lorry offloaded. Like, come on, right, give me high vis, let's go. But I think that was really what sold it to the rest of the people in the business to go, well, look, there's no coming in here to be no airs and graces. It was just, I wanted to roll my sleeves up and work as hard as I can. I work a lot of hours. I like working a lot of hours. I like getting involved. And I think that was ultimately the way I proved to the rest of the team. And there's still, and that was 14 years ago now, there's still loads of that team still with us. Because we're really proud of that fact. But I think not having done that would have been a mistake on reflection. I think that's certainly earned me a lot of political capital early on.
It's nice to hear that the people are still with you, because you seem to be a bit of a Glasgow institution as a business. So it's nice to hear that you retain a lot of your team.
Yeah, so people often tell me, I think our relationship with Clyde One's certainly a lot to do with that. I don't think I can get in any taxis or speak to anybody and tell them what I do without them mentioning, oh, I always hear you on the radio. But yeah, we are really proud of that fact. We are proud of a lot of people who have worked with us. We just recently had a lady in our accountancy team celebrate her 20th year. She's been with us, I think, since she was 16, 17. So she'll be annoyed that's me giving her age away. But Kirsty's part of the furniture now. And these are the stories that I love. I'm really proud of that.
And so in your tenure, you've taken the business from, I know, a team of 30 to what, 110, 12 now?
Yeah, we're 112 now, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And has the growth of that business come through the internet thing, the e-commerce arm of it, or what's the...
Yes, yeah, I mean, the e-commerce side has done well, but we've grown all our traditional channels as well by trying to do what we do best. I think the ethos of that has been the bit that's passed down through the generations. So from a showroom perspective, from a bathroom showroom perspective, we are militantly tidy and organised, which we love. It's always commented on by people in the industry who turn around and say, this is the best showroom I've been in. And they could be saying that to just sell us more product, but I genuinely believe that from people that I've dealt with for many, many years now. So that's certainly a strong point of us, but that's the heart of the business, is being fantastic shopkeepers, and presenting our product and our wares and our service to the customer as well as we possibly can, and that wins us a lot of custom and a lot of kudos, and that's certainly supported by the e-commerce side of the business as well, which opens up a wider marketplace for us. At the moment, the bricks and mortar retail is still the bigger part of our business, but I certainly don't think as the coming couple of years tick by, that will be the case. I think e-commerce should overtake, and that's only right in terms of the size of the market that's available to us. But they're both absolutely fundamental to what we do and what we are going to do.
And talk us through the decision to go multi-site then for bricks and mortar.
Yeah, that was one of my kind of proudest moments as well, because I think my dad and his brothers, I think that was, particularly from my dad's point of view in conversations we've had, it was always one of his goals, but something that he was maybe a bit more hesitant on doing in his time of cycle with the business. So I was really proud when we opened another site. So we opened Aberdeen in 2019, I think it was, which was great. It was really, really nice to do so. And then Edinburgh followed not long after. So we have the three, I think they're the three biggest cities in Scotland covered, and we've looked at others, and we may do that, but I think we're happy with where we are with that at the moment. Certainly brings its challenges again in terms of change of business and coming from a small nucleus team to then having teams in various different buildings and stuff. So that's been a learning curve as well. So all these challenges present learnings, but we always end up looking back on them and saying, that was fun learning about that. What's next?
And how do you maintain the kind of culture then, or the kind of team spirit across all 3 sites if they are separate teams?
With challenge, with much more challenge than being in one site. But I always look at these things and think, well, it's nothing that nobody else has not done before. So people must get it right. So how do we get it right? It's not like we're reinventing the wheel. So I'll look left and right to others to try and understand how that's been and worked. And it is difficult. It's still, I still don't like it at times because I want to have everybody together. I want to be able to talk to everybody at once. But the challenge for us as a retail business is we're closed 4 days a year. So it's a real, if you think about how you would traditionally do that in a like a professional services firm, is you would pick a Saturday and you'd have an offsite, or you'd pick a midweek day and have an offsite, but we're customer facing for 361 days or whatever it is. And that's not available to me. So we have to try and think of other ways to try and bring that. And I think all the new technologies that are out there, which probably have become much more a thing over the last 4 or 5 years, actually on call, seeing people, these things help, but it still is screen time. It's not face-to-face time. So I think we try and push as much as we can that the kind of senior team move about. It's not religious to a calendar, but I try and encourage it as much as I can do to try and get in front of people.
So you quite often travelling the country then, visiting the different sites, or what's your role involved now on a day-to-day basis?
A bit of everything, really. I try and get to our stores as much as I can. Not enough, but I definitely would like to do more. From a day-to-day basis, I'm basically learning a new role at the moment, and that has come from me taking a bit of a step back and going, well, what does the business need from me? It doesn't need me to be super hands-on day-to-day, processing orders or dealing with a customer or speaking to this or speaking to that, which is what I know and love, but it's not what the business needs anymore. The business needs somebody thinking about strategy, thinking about the business, working on the business, not in the business, as the kind of cliche goes. But that's super true for us at the moment. So I feel like I'm trying to learn and develop myself as I work out how to be in that role. We've made a kind of decision this year that we are spending a lot of time tidying up processes that we have. And that's been really good. That's been a real project to get involved in. So over the last few years, we've opened new stores, we've opened new websites, launched new brands, and that's kept everyone super, super busy. And then we kind of turned around this year and went, well, look, see all that stuff we've done. Let's try and make the most of that instead of trying to do something else. So that's been our focus this year. So that's allowed me to be really strategic, to think, well, what gets the most out of all these things that we've worked really hard to put in place? And the funny thing is, I don't think we've ever worked harder, and we don't have the big, massive capital project in the scope at the moment, which has always been the thing that we've worked hardest on. We're actually now working on improving what we've already got. And that's turned into being the kind of busiest we've ever been, which is great. And we're pushing things forward as fast as we can.
Yeah, I quite often talk to clients about there's no point in filling a leaky bucket. It's like, actually, and actually, again, that shiny object, it's like, well, I want to go and do that. But it's actually, you've got a good core business. Yeah. If we can just, tighten up around that, it can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the slides that was in one of our management packs a couple of weeks ago had a picture of a leaky bucket on it, so that couldn't be more apt. So yeah, absolutely true. And that is what our core focus is at the moment. And the team will tell you I love an analogy, and I think the analogy I'm trying to use at the moment is we have a field of cows and we're not milking them properly. So instead of buying another field, let's just get the milking process better. So I keep walking about saying this in the office and people look at me strangely, but it's the analogy we're using and I'm sticking to it.
And how have you found moving from working in to working on? How difficult has that been?
Challenging. difficult because, and particularly because of my personality, because I am that kind of control freak. If I'm walking through the office and I hear people working on something, which inevitably I'll know something about, at the moment, there's points where I'm actually physically moving myself to not gravitate across to join the conversation, because it's just in my nature to get involved in it. And I'm thinking, well, no, that's not what the business needs from me anymore. I now need to be back in my office or working with, or trying to promote my kind of senior leadership team and get people working around me to work on what's next, what's the next step, let people solve that problem whilst we are working on what happens once that's solved, what's the opportunity there. And that is, I find it hard. I really do. And I have to check myself. And I've got people now in the team who are turning around to me and going, that's not your job. Just you step away. And they probably say it in less polite terms than that. And I get sent on my marching orders to go and do what I'm actually good at. Or I like to think I'm good at all, but what I'm more useful to the business or.
A lot of business leaders that come in tell us that it can be lonely at the top sometimes, and how important it is for them to be proactive and seeking out the right network and people to surround themselves with. Has that been something that's been important to you?
Absolutely, and I've done that a couple of times over the years at various points. I think at one point, I don't know when this was, maybe about 4 years ago, I sat in my office and I thought, I don't know, I just didn't know where to turn. I felt as if we'd hit a bit of a blind alley in terms of some of the setup that I wanted. I didn't know how to achieve it. I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know how to make it happen. And I picked up the phone. I think it was about 5 o'clock at night. I picked up the phone to somebody at the Chamber of Commerce and said, "Look, I need help here. I need a sounding board. I need somebody who's been through this kind of." It was almost like you'd hit a ceiling. How do you push through to go into the next room for the next ceiling and work towards that? And they very thankfully put a business mentor relationship in place, which I lent on quite heavily for the following few months after that. Burst through that ceiling and then had another kind of few months to be able to work on that, and then back to the mentor. So trying to go step by step and work through. So I think from my perspective, I probably did things like that a little late. I think if people ask me when I go and speak at various events, what do you wish you'd known sooner? And certainly for me would be utilising the power of network. I think there was too much of me thinking I'm sat in my office, I know it all, I know how to do this business. On reflection, I know everything about wholesale domestic, but there's plenty out there that happens that I have absolutely no idea about, that people can input their ideas into my head and into our business. And the power of network to me has been massive, and I lean heavily on that now in whatever opportunity I have. So that was a real learning point for me. I wish I'd done that earlier.
And how did it feel going from a leader of 30 people to 112? What were the things you had to learn or adapt going through that change?
I wouldn't say the people management bit is my strongest point. I know how to maintain people relationships, but I sometimes don't stop and think about the impact of, not the impact, that this may be wrong, as to how people might perceive or communicate. I'm accelerator to the ground as fast as I possibly can, but not everybody is that way. And I think my mistake was assuming that everyone is. And if I communicate, this is what we're doing as fast as we can, everyone's like, okay. But they're not that way. There's skepticism amongst some people. There's people who take longer to digest things. And I think that's where my learnings have had to come, is to go, well, look, people will not understand, accept, want to go at that pace. And we're going to have to slice and dice it in different ways for different members of the team. And thankfully, I've got people around me now who help with that. And yeah, I'm really thankful for being able to do so. And I still can sometimes be bull in a china shop trying to get things done. But it's just the way I am. But the important thing is now that there is people around me who are complementary, but also different. Who look at things from a different way and can then suggest that we maybe have to sell things differently or put things differently to the team in order to get their buy-in and make sure they understand what they're being asked to do.
And what's the scariest moment you've had in business so far?
I think for me, I don't like generally talking about COVID because it seems to kind of pull everybody's thoughts of the kind of 5 year ago period, but it was obviously a major factor. But I think for me, that would probably be what was the scariest moment. I think there's a bit of revisionism going on as to what the pandemic was now because people think of what it ended up like. When we think about furloughs and people having multiple jobs and all this type of things and all the support and help that was in place. But if we think back to the first day, I think it was a Monday night when the lockdown announcement was made, I drove down to our building on the Tuesday morning and my job was to pull the shutter down on a retail business, on a customer-facing business. Our only source of income is customer. Coming into the shop and buying, obviously e-commerce as well, but the nuts and bolts of its bricks and mortar store. So at that stage, you're pulling the shutter down going, I don't know when a customer's ever going to come back in here. And I've got all these costs. And the way we buy is we source globally. So there's dozens and dozens and dozens of containers on shipping vessels on their way to Scotland from around the globe with goods that need bought and paid for. What are we going to do? And that was a really harsh day. Trying to think that obviously the revisionism aspect comes in from us as well because we can go, well, look, it was fine, but at that exact point you're thinking to yourself, well, when's the till going to ring again and help pay for all this type of thing? And then we brought I always tell this story because I love it because it's such an important bit from our business. But the pressure that kind of put on was huge. That exact day, I brought all the team, as we pulled the shutter down, I brought the entire team together and we were in our front counter and I said to them, look, we'll do what we can. I don't know what's going to happen, blah, 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 trying to set the scene and trying to retain a bit of positivity and try and be that figurehead. And there was a guy who's worked for us for, I think, 20 odd years now, who was there and he turned around and he went, there was murmurs amongst the team and he turned around to the rest of his colleagues whilst I'm presenting and he went, don't worry guys, the business will look after us, they always have, which is such a proud moment for me to look back on. And I love that comment, but as I said, that when you reflect on that and go, well, there's an expectation that we were going to look after everybody, and that's before anything was known that there was supports or anything in place. So thankfully we were able to look after the team, retain them and work together. But yeah, that was a real powerful statement that I'll hold with me forever.
How do you manage the pressure of that though? I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, all these people have got mortgages, bills to pay, you're responsible for them all.
Yes.
How did you handle the pressure that must have brought?
I guess that's just that I thrive in that environment. That's what I really like to do. I actually feel like I deliver the best when I'm under the cosh. I think even from school, my reports and things at school were always like, Brian does enough to get his results and get his grades, but unless he was challenged, there was no, and I think I'm still the same. When the pressure comes on, I love to kind of solve that and get it done. If we're in a period which I can't remember has happened recently, where there's a bit of a lull or anything like that in terms of what we're delivering in the kind of central office of the business, I can get a bit left and right and look into the sides and what have you. But I really personally work as best as I can under pressure. And your comment on mortgages is absolutely right. That's how I look at things. It's one of the actual adages that I have when I think and make decisions for the business. And I sit and say it often when I'm sitting making a call on to do something, because I'm naturally a bit of a risk taker. I like to take risks, calculated risks, in my own life, but also in the business life. I like to seize opportunity. But one of my check-in factors is to say I'm responsible for 112 mortgages here. I'm not just responsible for my own well-being. And that certainly keeps me grounded in the decision process.
And so when have you taken a risk and it went wrong?
Trying to think specifically on that.
Or maybe it wasn't the best. Maybe if you had your time again, you would think, oh, I wouldn't have made that decision.
A few times on hiring. I think that I think we've discovered that I'm not the best person through the hiring process. I think as a team we laugh about it now, so I'm kept well away from the interview process now. I think we've made a few mistakes there from a personnel perspective. But I think overall we've stayed on a pretty positive trajectory, and things I've been pretty proud of. I think things on reflection I would maybe have done certain bits sooner, or maybe pushed or pulled a few levers differently. But there's nothing I would sit back and go, from a strategic perspective, I wish I hadn't taken the business in that direction. I think we've done a lot of things right. I think just maximising them and taking them fully has been the challenge that we are now trying to solve.
And how does it work then in terms of like the business moving forward? Have you got a real clear plan of where you're taking it? Do you have quarterly offsites, annual planning days? How do you work the meeting rhythm of your business?
So I think for me the plan is for e-commerce to be the big brother of the business. Certainly going to be a real focus and push on that. I'm thankful now. It's one of the challenges that we have is that I'm the only day-to-day director of the business. My dad's still involved in the business. Him and I work very closely together, and we make a lot of decisions together. But he works less time now. So from a day-to-day perspective, I'm there all day, every day. And the need now for people within the business to become part of that is greater than ever. So I think that's certainly one of the upcoming challenges that we're going to have. Look, at the end of the day, from a director's point of view in the business, every director and every director's board table I've ever sat around, I've only looked at people with the same surname as me. So that can't go on forever, or as we continue to scale. So I'm surrounding myself with the right people, and trying to work out how to then create that cascade effect from me to them to then the wider team, because it's always been from me to the wider team. So what responsibilities can I pass on? What decisions can I pass on whilst still acknowledging that at heart I'm still a control freak? So trying to work out what decisions are made. So I think I've realised that as we continue to grow, if I didn't do that, I'm the bottleneck. So I'm trying to take myself away from that. I think it's very obvious that I could be that person, and probably have been that person in certain decisions and processes we've taken. So I'm delighted now to be able to move more people closer to me, and then create more layers. But the difficulty in that is, again, presents itself as for things like quarterly offsites is, how do I take my sales managers? So they've got teams that are customer facing and what have you. So that certainly becomes a challenge, but we've got a full management team meeting next week, would be the first time in a few months we've had everybody together. And we're doing it in a completely different format. Trying to get everybody to present their areas rather than be presented to by me, which again is just part of the journey. So I'm really looking forward to that.
And how many people are in that management team?
Goodness, probably about a dozen.
And how did you decide, or if you're going to add more people to that, how are you deciding what you take off your desk? Is it, because obviously I think the path of least resistance is, oh, I like that, but it's maybe not necessarily said what the best value for the business or the best use of your time. Yeah,
I think it needs to be the more senior type decisions and the more business critical type decisions that need to become part of that. I think the bit that's missing is the gap that I've had myself and the management team, and that gap stayed with a certain width on it, but that gap needs to be filled. So I think it now needs to be multi-layer within that gap, and those decisions that maybe were reserved or kept for director only are now not director only, they're director and senior manager, who can meet and collaborate on those decisions. That certainly, I think my mistake, first of all, was to think that even those more sensitive decisions were a management team decision. They're not. That's too many. It needs to be, and that now we're elevating people more senior to the management team to be senior managers, and let's say will ultimately hopefully become directors of the business at some stage. They need to be on their journey as well. So I need to share what would typically be more sensitive type decisions or discussions with them. And it's really cathartic for me as well, because as soon as I'm doing that, I'm getting different viewpoints rather than Brian's viewpoint, which is great, because it ultimately leads to better decision making.
I think it kind of brings us back to the start, where it's like you're talking about family businesses going out and getting that if you just get trained within the business, you've only got that one viewpoint. So yeah. I guess my other point, just as a fellow accountant, how did you find your accountancy? Like, has that served you well with a good groundwork for what came with having to run a business? Or?
Absolutely, 100%. I couldn't advocate the kind of CA education more for being a business leader now. An all-rounder education really has kind of pushed me on, but also the exposure I then had ultimately to clients. I think that's been the kind of secret sauce I could bring to Wholesale Domestic, was seeing, obviously I worked for a big 4 accountancy firm, so you're seeing major scale clients. And whilst you're there doing jobs like audit, and for those who've been through it will know how challenging and grinding audits are and things like that, you're observing. You're hearing, you're seeing things going on, which ultimately have played huge parts in what we have done at Wholesale Domestic. Observing from some of the biggest banks in the world who were my clients, you're still picking things up. It might not be entirely 100% relevant, but you're picking up ideas, thoughts, theories, methodologies, processes, handoffs, trade-offs, and how all that works. And I think that's certainly what I've been able to bring to the business. But the CA education definitely played a huge part in it, and I'm really thankful I have that. And now I don't do any number. I've got my finance team in place, but I know that if I had to, I could go and get my hands dirty in there. But the finance team are better than I could ever be.
I did wonder about that, actually, when you were talking about being an accountant and a control freak by your own. And I thought, how were the finance team when you first came in? I'm thinking, poor guys.
Yeah. Well, the finance team's probably looks really different now than it was at the time I kind of got involved with the business. But yeah, the funny thing is they probably get left the most to it than the rest of it, which is counterintuitive to my background and my education. But it's just the way it's kind of fallen.
So what do the next 5 years or so hold for Wholesale Domestic then?
Growth. I'm desperate to grow the business. I've been involved with the business since 2012. We've grown every year on year since 2012. So we've got 13 years straight of growth, and I don't plan on making that stop. So certainly want to grow as a company. But I really want to do new things more efficiently. So embracing new technologies, that's a big part of what we're at just now. Embracing new efficiencies that those technologies can bring us. And the teams are really excited by that. That's what we're doing at the moment. A lot of little mini projects which are all deadlined at the moment and are for the rest of the year. So that's great. But for me, it would be also having in that period a kind of high senior leadership team who are with me as part of that journey. But that's all got to be underpinned by taking the business further. Maybe some more sites. I don't know if my team are listening to this.
There's a wry smile there. I can see it.
Maybe some more sites. Big push from an e-commerce perspective, and developing and training the people we've got. That's been one of my proudest bits of doing what we've done, is the people that work from us and the journey they've been on. And more of that all will contribute to what is the ultimate goal, is to have a bigger, more successful business.
Thank you. So we always end by asking our guests what their guiding principle is in business. What would you say?
For me, I think I've touched on it already. It's be bullish, be forthright, make decisions, but understand ultimately your decisions risk that is attached to it. And for me, my grounding factor in that is, as I said, thinking about everybody that works for us. People have left and we've lost staff through various things through the years, but none of that is through poor decisions that have been taken from a strategic perspective. And I don't want that ever to be the case. We want to have a team that supports us and take it forward. So for me, take decisions, but always remember that you're responsible for everybody who works for you.
Brian, it's been a pleasure having you on. Wish you well in your growth journey.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing how it goes.
Thank you so much.